Hey there, my name is Chris Acton with Acting Creative, and this is a handwoven experience. And in today's episode, I'm bringing you part 2 of our twill weaving ideas. You see, if you have done a little bit of weaving and you've thought, yeah, I did some twill, check, all done with that now. Wait, hold the phone, because if you've thought of twill as a one-trick pony, friends, this pony can do all the tricks. It's not just one trick. It's so many. There's so many variations under this huge umbrella that we call twill. So as you're considering what to put into your loom next, I would love to give you some ideas that fall under this fabulous umbrella of twill weaving. So in part 1, I brought you some real classics: houndstooth, herringbone, and pinwheels. But I have 4 more ideas for you. Today, I'm going to bring you the wonderful bird's eye, rose path, undulating twill, and let's not forget just some good old classic mixed twills. You see, friends, I have yet to exhaust all of the twill variations. There's so many out there. And honestly, even between our 2 parts here, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So if you are looking for ideas for what to go on the loom next, I am going to encourage you, give you a little nudge towards the world of twills, because there's so much to uncover there, and I think you will absolutely love it. Without further ado, let's dive into part 2 of our twill weaving ideas. Hey there, it's Chris Acton with Acting Creative, and this is a handwoven experience, episode 112. And in this episode, I'm going to break down bird's eye twill. Now, what prompted all of this is that I set up my loom in a point twill threading. So I was like, what can I do with that? Now, if you aren't familiar with a point twill threading, no worries. After you watch this, back it up to episode 111 and I break it down step by step right there. But in a nutshell, a point twill threading is when you use a sequence in your shafts that looks like a zigzag. So instead of doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, like a straight draw, like I normally do, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, like you're constantly kind of pinging back and forth. That's how you are threading your shafts in a point twill threading. So like I said, just check out the previous episode if you have questions about that. But because I had my loom set up like that, I thought, well, let's explore some of the patterns that you can do once you have your loom dressed in that manner. So, bird's eye twill. Let's talk about this. So, the basic components for a bird's eye twill are the point twill threading, right? Floating selvages, right? See my guys there? A floating selvage generally is a good idea with a twill, just to make sure that your weft yarn is going all the way to the edges of your fabric. It's just a nice little kind of insurance policy. And the last component in creating a bird's eye twill is the treadling. Now, let's talk about this, because I did a little research about bird's eye twill, and it's big. There are lots and lots of treadling options. And my friend Marguerite Porter Davison had a lot to say. So if you really want to kind of dive into some of the history, and she's got lots to say on that. But what I discovered in general is that a bird's eye twill always has that real distinctive diagonal pattern to it. Check out my close-up right here so you can see it. And in many of the other ones, they talked about how there's also a dot in the middle to kind of create like the bird's eye. I know, it's a stretch, but think about how many hundreds of years someone said, hey, we're gonna call this pattern, it looks like a bird's eye, we're gonna call it that. You know, we'll roll with it, right? So there's lots of options when it comes to treadling a bird's eye twill. So I settled on one that was pretty straightforward, just a 2-2, which means I always have 2 yarns up and 2 yarns down, always. So while there's a whole world of bird's eye twill, and please, if you like it, go exploring, my friend. Let me know all that you learn. I thought for today, I would just show you this one quick little sample of the version that I'm working on here on my loom. Are you ready? Okay, so Like I said, I'm always going to have 2 shafts up and 2 shafts down. That is what a 2-2 is going to mean in this case. Okay, so I'm going to start with 1 and 2. So I pull down my levers, shafts 1 and 2 lifted up. I'm going to throw my shuttle here. And then I'm going to go 2, 3. That's next. And then 3, 4. You're seeing where this is going, right? And then 4, 1. And that becomes kind of the top of the pattern, because now we're going to go right back down. We're going to go 3, 4. You see it, right? You're getting the pattern, the idea. Then 2, 3. And lastly, back to 1, 2. And then you could just go right back up. I always think of those patterns as being kind of up and down, because in my head, visually that makes sense, but you know what I mean, right? After 1 and 2, you'll go 2 and 3. You just kind of keep going. You just kind of wing back and forth between 1 and 2 and then 1 and 4. Anyways, all that to say that it's a very simple repeat to create this really rich, interesting fabric full of diamonds and dots. Yeah, it's so much fun. So if you find yourself, like me, in a situation where your loom is dressed specifically with a point twill threading, ooh, dive right in, my friends. Give Bird's Eye a try and see if you like all that. Okay, I hope you have a great week and happy weaving. Hey there, it's Chris with Acton Creative, and this is a handwoven experience. In today's episode, I'm asking the very important question: are you ready for Rose Path? Think on that for a moment. Let's talk about it, shall we? Rose Path, at the core of it, is a twill, and we know twills, right? A twill fabric always has kind of a diagonal element to it, and Rose Path is no exception. You can make very cool diamonds and these cool mountains, and there's lots and lots of options with Rose Path. And once you get into it, you'll see, oh, it's very similar to other twills that you've done. Now, because it's a twill, that means that we're going to have some floating selvages. Just a reminder, floating selvage is a warp yarn that's at the very edge of your fabric. You always have a pair of them, one at each side, and it is a warp yarn whose sole job is to stand still. That's the whole job of the floating selvage. Because it is going to stand in one place, we need that so that our weft yarn can wrap around it and come back the other way. Because in a twill pattern, in so many cases, just the nature of the beast, the weft yarn doesn't automatically go all the way to the edge. It might stop a few yarns short of the very edge of the fabric. And we don't want that. We want our weft yarn to go all the way to the edge of the fabric every single time we throw the shuttle, with every pick. That's what one throw of the shuttle is called, a pick. So floating selvages, because the twill, they all go hand in hand. And what I discovered about Rose Path is that you can have a whole entire fabric of Rose Path twill. Beautiful, luscious, you will absolutely love it. But you could also use Rose Path for little decorative elements. For instance, you could create a motif border where you have little, I've seen flowers and all kinds of cool little things that you can add using a Rose Path pattern. So if you're watching this video and you're thinking, ooh, I'm really intrigued, oh, there's a lot that you can do. And what I'll show you today is just the tip of the iceberg. So go diving, my friend. You'll find lots of cool stuff. So let's talk about what makes Rose Path, what makes it really distinctive. And it really comes down to the threading. Now, when I say threading, what I mean is the sequence that your warp yarns go into your shafts. I'm sitting at the front of the loom. This is the beater bar. Here are my 4 shafts. So what is the order that I'm going to put my warp yarns into my shafts? Now, in a previous episode, I talked about something called a point twill threading. Let me show you what that looks like. I'm using my favorite book in the whole wide world, the N. Dixon Handweaver's Pattern Directory, and on page 72, this is a great sample of a point twill threading. By the way, this section of your draft always tells you what the threading is. And look at our visual here. We're going up and we're going down, and then we'll repeat, and we'll go up and down and up and down for the whole pattern, for the whole fabric. And what that means for us is that we are going to put warp yarn number 1 in shaft number 1, and then 2 and 3 and 4, and then we're gonna go back down. 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're constantly kind of making this zigzag pattern in your shafts, which is very, very cool. But that's a point twill threading. In Rose Path, it takes it one step further. So on page 74, check this out. This is our Rose Path threading. And this is really what makes Rose Path distinctive, is this threading right here. Now, you'll see visually, it kind of looks like our point twill, right? It goes up and then ultimately it goes down, but there's this one little extra in there. And as I was reading information about Rose Path, I found 2 kind of ways to describe this. The first one was to say that it was a broken point twill, meaning you get to the top and it doesn't go down immediately. It has one more to kind of break the sequence. And that was all fine and good, but the one that I kind of liked said that it was an extended point twill, which sounds wonderful. It sounds like, oh, just a little more. It's just a little extra. And that is what Rose Path really is. It's just a little extra. So as you're threading, you're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you make a little pit stop, adding just a little extra, a little cherry on top. And then you go back to the top, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you do it all over again. But this threading is really what makes Rose Path unique. Now, what I found is that the treadling, meaning which shafts you lift and lower in which order, boy, that can be very different. And if you're on a floor loom, the tie-ups, there's a lot of variation there. So there can be a lot of options for you as you are weaving your Rose Path. So why don't I just show you the one that I'm working on right here, and you can kind of see what that looks like. Okay, so in this particular one, there's a couple of different things happening here. I'm gonna use a little red just to, it pops. You gotta love some red. Okay, so for this part of the pattern then, I am only lifting one shaft at a time, but here's what it looks like. I'm gonna send that over that way. That's shaft number 4, by the way, is where I'm starting. Shaft number 3 is next. We'll go back the opposite direction. Shaft number 2, you see how this goes, right? Just a little, we're just walking it down. Shaft number 1. And kind of like our threading, we're gonna add a little something extra. We're gonna go back and do shaft number 4. Dun, da, da, da. And then we'll start at the bottom and go back up. So number 1. And then number 2, you see where this is going, right? And then 3 and 4. In a little twist of irony, the treadling, so the order that I'm lifting and lowering the shafts, is the same, it looks the same as the threading. You gotta love those kind of little geeky moments in the weaving world. Okay, so I'm gonna lean you over here so you can kind of see. Everybody hang on. Do you see the diamond patterns here? Isn't that fun? Look at what you can do with Rose Path. So much fun, right? So if you've never tried some Rose Path, I would say give it a go. If you are like, okay, I know that I love some twill, this is gonna be great fun, take it for a test drive. And what is wonderful about Rose Path, as lots of twills, is that you set it up a certain way and then just keep playing with the treadling and the tie-ups. Like keep varying your options, because the sky's the limit, honestly. All right, my friends, go try some Rose Path. It's a lot of fun. And I think you'll find just a million variations for you to play with. And that's good for our creativity all around. All right, have a wonderful week. Happy weaving. Hey there, it's Chris Acton with Acton Creative, and this is a handwoven experience. And in today's episode, I am bringing you the curvy undulating twill. Now, of that title, undulating twill, you've probably heard of the twill part, right? As a weaver, when you first start, you pretty much learn plain weave and then immediately you learn twill. Twill is a huge category with all kinds of amazing possibilities. And what makes twill really distinctive is this diagonal feature in the fabric. And of course you can combine that to make not just diagonals, but like little arrows and little diagonals and zigzags. The possibilities are endless, honestly. And that's what makes twill so much fun. So this undulating twill is just like a little crazy little cousin of all of his other twill patterns that just looks a little different than a standard twill. So let's talk about the word undulating. Now, when I hear the word undulating, I think of people doing the wave, like a sporting event, you know, when they all stand up with their arms, the whole thing. Yeah, that effect is an undulating effect. It's this great kind of curvy look. But, you know, we're weavers. We don't work in curves. No. We don't do that. So it's an optical illusion, truly. We're not actually curving our warp yarns or weft yarns at any point during the pattern. But the goal then is how do we change the angles of the diagonals so they look like they're curvy? That's the whole point. Let me show you an example. This is a swatch from the April 2024 Weave Along where undulating twill was the theme. Look at that. Okay, how fun is that? Now, do you see how the lines, let's follow like this line right here. See, it kind of is angled this way and then it kind of gets fatter and a little slower and then it goes, do you see this cool effect? Isn't that fun? And my friends, it's not hard at all. If you can do a twill, you can do some undulating twill. But this is an example of what an undulating twill can look like. And in my research, as I was kind of looking around at various drafts and what other people had done for undulating twill, I found that it's most common to create the undulating effect in the threading, in the warp yarns. That was the most common spot to actually change the spacing of things so that you had this like curvy effect. But you can also do it in the weft yarns for sure. So of course, you know me, I decided I would try to put it in both. So let me tilt you down and I'll show you how I tackled undulating twill. Okay, here I am sitting at my table loom. And like I said, in so many of the drafts, what I found is that people created that curvy effect by changing the spacing of their warp yarns, by specifically assigning the warp yarns differently in the shafts. And here's what I did for mine, is that everywhere that I had a very dark green stripe, right, where I had dark green warp yarns, I did straight draw. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, basic, easy, great. But every place where I had the lighter green stripes, I doubled that. So I would do one warp yarn in shaft 1 and then the next one in shaft 1. And then 2 and 2 and 3 and 3 and 4 and 4. So what that does is that it changes the size of the floats in the fabric, altering the look of the diagonals. So that was how I kind of modified the threading for my undulating twill. Let's talk about the treadling, huh? So this pattern that I chose is a 2-2 twill, which means I always have 2 shafts up and 2 shafts down. It's always this kind of combination. And you always just kind of move over one slot so they're always neighbors, right? So here's how I did it. I took my weft here, my shuttle, send it right through. It's a 2-2 twill. This is all we're gonna do, right? 1, 2, and then shafts 2 and 3, shafts 3 and 4, and then 4 and 1, right? That gives us this beautiful little diagonal, and you can see everywhere that I have the threading is doubled, it already looks kind of crazy and cool, right? However, I took it one step further. And I decided I would go back through the 2-2 twill sequence, but I would double it up. Now, because it's a twill, I always have floating selvages. So I'm gonna leave everything as it is. I'm just gonna wrap around my floating selvage and come back so I have 2 yarns in the same shed space. Next one, 2 and 3. Just like this, wrap it around. 3 and 4, you see it, right? Whoops, there we go. Wrap that around like that. So let me get it under. And then 4 and 1. So what this does then is that here, I'll put up a close-up right here so you can see kind of what we just did. What that does is it kind of changes the thinness and the thickness of the diagonals, and the diagonals aren't at the same angle all the time. So it gives the illusion of curves. Isn't that fun? It is just, I had so much fun with this pattern, and I hope that if you haven't experimented with it, that you will give it a try, because with just a few modifications, you can really create some kind of, it looks so complicated and so advanced when it's not hard at all. And it really kind of makes your eyes cross, which is fun. Which is fun because as weavers, we're pretty straightforward and, you know, straight lines and all the good things, but to create that kind of optical illusion, that's a good time. All right, friends, if you haven't given Undulating Twill a try yet, now is a great time. Why not? Have a wonderful week. Happy weaving. Hey there, my name is Acton with Acton Creative, and this is a handwoven experience. And not just any handwoven experience episode, friends, this is number 200. Yes! Over the last 5 years, we've found so many amazing, interesting topics to cover, and we show no signs of stopping. So, in order to celebrate this very special 200th episode, we are going to talk about mixed twills. Now, mixed twills is really kind of a category versus a very specific pattern. It refers to anytime you are mashing up multiple versions of twill together in one glorious piece of fabric. And I always like to take it one step further, and I like to always throw a little plain weave in there too. So you've got this whole world of twills plus a little plain weave, all throw it together in one beautiful, interesting pattern. So that is what the category of mixed twills refers to. Now, when I think of mixed twills, I think of my table loom, because I think that as you're combining one type of twill with another type of twill, you're going to have a lot of different treadling options come up. And I like the flexibility and spontaneity that comes with my table loom. I can just reach for whichever levers I want to come next, and off I go. Versus on a floor loom, you can absolutely set it up for mixed twill. It just takes a little more thought when it comes to how you're tying it up and connecting the treadles to the shafts. But for me, when I think of mixed twills, I think of my table loom, which makes me immensely happy. So let's start by talking about the world of twills. Now, if you are weaving a twill, your pattern is going to have a significant diagonal to it. That's the kind of key feature that goes with every kind of twill. That diagonal may go straight, it may do a little zigzag, it may be even, uneven, there's all kinds of options, but it always has that significant diagonal in the pattern. And to create that, you've got a couple different camps you can work in. First of all is the balanced twill. Now this is known as a 2-2 twill, for a 4-shaft, I should say. A 2-2 twill is going to have half of the yarns are up and half the yarns are down, but you do it in a slightly different manner than, say, plain weave, because plain weave, half are up and half are down, right? If you are doing a balanced twill, a 2-2 twill, you have 2 shafts are up and 2 shafts are down, but they're the neighbors. They're the ones that are right next to each other. And then as you're creating the twill, you're constantly shifting them over like one spot, if you can think about it that way. So that is going to give you this very cool diagonal in your fabric. And a balanced twill is going to look the same on the top and the bottom of the fabric. Balanced. Makes sense, right? So when you think of other variations that aren't balanced, that are unbalanced, you're talking about a 1-3 or a 3-1 twill. So if you've ever played with just lifting one shaft at a time and just moving it like shaft 1 and then 2 and 3, 4, that is an unbalanced twill, where you are going over, maybe you're jumping over 3 yarns and then under 1, or the opposite, where you're jumping over 1 yarn and then under 3. Now that type of twill is going to look significantly different on the top and the bottom. So you're going to have that kind of contrast, which can be really fun to play with. Now, when you were talking about mixed twills, then we are going to take all those varieties and mash them up in different ways. And there's all kinds of ways that you can tackle that. I've got a couple options that I've already woven so you can see. Like, check out this one where I started with just lifting 1 shaft at a time, and then I lifted 2 shafts, and then 3. And I kept just going the same direction, but moving everybody over 1 slot each time. But look at the effect that you get when you just combine. It's lifting 1 shaft, and then 2 shafts, and then 3, all together. Very, very cool. Now, what you'll find is that if you were doing a pure mixed twill variation where it's all twill on twill on twill, you absolutely are going to need some floating selvages, because there's so many instances when your weft yarn isn't going to go from edge to edge naturally. So you need something to wrap around. So make sure that you put in some floating selvages to help you with your mixed twill pattern. Now, for me, this is where I like to throw in a little bit of plain weave, because that is going to help me avoid having to mess with floating selvages. I don't mind them so much, but there are times you're like, oh, floating selvages are one more thing. So I like to do my mixed twill with some plain weave thrown in there just for good measure. So I'm going to show you one of my favorites right here, which is a little kind of 3 and 3 combination where I've got 3 picks of plain weave and then 3 picks of twill. So let me show you kind of what that could look like in real life, so you get an idea how you can play with the twills and throw some plain weave in there too. Okay, here we go. So I am gonna do just a 2-2 twill. So like we said, we always have 2 shafts are up and 2 shafts are down. And I'm gonna kind of walk it across my loom. I'll show you what that looks like. Now, I am starting on my right-hand side, so I like to always have some kind of connection in the pattern to the levers that are on the right. So I'm gonna start with these guys over here. Now, keep in mind, I don't have any floating selvages here on my project, but I don't need them for this variation. So you see I have these are pulled down. I'm just gonna switch it over to the ones in the middle, just like that. And then, see that? Just take it right over to the other side. So I'm gonna do 3 of those, and then I'm gonna wander into 3 picks of plain weave. Here we go. Now, my shuttle's on this side, so I'm gonna make sure that I'm connected to the lever on this side. So this is my first pick here. So just plain weave, just a couple, yeah, plain weave, just like that. 3 of those. See, it's a 3-3. It's a 3-3 thing. Now, when I come back around, it's time for some more twill. So I'm thinking that I want to do just one at a time. So I'm just going to have 1 lever pulled down, which means 1 yarn is up and the other 3 are down. Now, this means I'm going to see more of each weft in the fabric. But I'm going to keep it as doing 3 of each. 1, 2, this is 3 here, which gives you a very different look. Then back to plain weave, just like that. And friends, this is just one tiny little variation. There's so many other options available to you. All you gotta do is play with your options for different twills, put a little plain weave in there. And if you want to get really fancy, you can absolutely think about changing the threading for your project. I have just a straight draw in here, but you could absolutely change this to a point twill threading or some kind of maybe an M&W. There's all kinds of different threading options you could do to play with to make your mixed twill patterns all that much more exciting. There's really no limit. Just kind of kick around the idea of what happens if I put this twill with another twill and maybe change directions and then bring in a different kind of twill. There's all kinds of fun options. And I encourage you to give it a try, because honestly, plain weave and twill, they're the first 2 things that you ever learn as a weaver. And with those alone, the options are endless. Just keep playing. So let me know, do you ever play with mixed twills? What's been your experience? Have you found some very cool patterns to create using just twills? Let me know in the comments. All right, friends, happy 200th episode to all of us. And go play with some mixed twill, would you? Have a great week. Happy weaving.